It's not just important. The snare drum is vital to an overall good sound of a song, of a band, of the energy. When I was growing up, there was a certain level of respect that a musician gained by having at least basic knowledge on how to drum tech certain things. Not just the toms being in tune, but knowing how to properly balance a snare wire onto a snare drum so that when you play the drum, it sounds like a sick, awesome snare drum. The most important thing is making sure your snare straps that hold the wire in place are set up well, and when you tighten everything up, you activate it and it's sitting centered. If it's not, you have to adjust. You want the snare wires to sit in a very solid, balanced, neutral position. So what that means is when you activate the snare wires in their neutral position, it should not sound like it should sound more like it should sound loose and open, but activated. When I set up my tension rod for neutral, what I want to do is go all the way to one end extreme. So I'll do it here for you now. Some tension rods, some throw-offs, if you loosen them all the way, it may unscrew the actual tension rod from a base system and it could make it fall apart. So be careful. If your tension rod is like that, just loosen it to a place where it's maybe on its last couple of threads. Now that I'm all the way extremely on one side of the tension setting, I'm going to count out a measured amount. I have my fingers like this, and I will turn them and then reposition back to that same position. So each turn is the same amount. Thumb on the inside, index on the outside, and I just give it a turn. That's about a quarter turn. See where my thumb is here at like 3 o'clock, and I turn and it goes to about 6 o'clock. Now the measurement of the turn isn't specifically important as much as it is you acknowledging how much you're moving, so that every time you move the same amount. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 quarter circle turns is what it took to get from one extreme to the other on the tension rod. So the neutral position of this tension rod is going to be 7.5 of those turns. So now I'm going to go back. So I changed my finger positioning for ergonomic reasons. I got my thumb on the bottom, 6 o'clock, index at the top at 12. And I'll do a quarter turn again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then a half. So now my tension rod is right in the middle of its overall tension potential. It's at 7.5 turns from both extreme sides of tension. I'm just going to do the same thing with this. I'm just going to go all the way down until it stops. And that is an advantage of Tama throw-offs and tension rod butt plates, is that they do all lock in. So if you go all the way to the extreme, none of the components are going to fall apart. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17, a little different than the other one. All good. The goal is to get the middle. So 17 divided by 2, 8.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. So now both of my tension rods from my strainer system are in their neutral position. Now that exactly sets me up to produce a neutral strainer setting, so that when I put the snare wires on and I get them all strapped in and locked in, it should sound like a on the looser side but activated. A quarter turn makes a big difference sonically between how the snare is going to buzz. So a few quarter turns on your tension rods from the neutral position and you're already focusing the snare wires massively. Next step, let's get the snare wires on. What I like to do is I like to get it in, and then I just, I eye it, obviously, get it evened out at the top, and then I give it a nice crimp. So I'm not doing the other side yet. I do, it's a 3-step process. So I go to the butt plate side first, get that mildly locked in, go over to the throw-off side, get that mildly locked in. When I say mildly, I mean like that you can't just whip them out, but you can still fine-tune them. Right now what I'm doing is I'm looking at where the snare wires just sit and how much space they leave between their edge and the edge of the snare head. So I'm looking at that and I'm just centering it up so that there's an even amount of space on each side. Once I get that in place, I kind of just go over here. I've got my finger on the snare band where it's locked into the snare wire. That keeps it from kicking back because it's a very easily movable piece of material. It's not flimsy. It's got a hardness to it. So I want to make sure that my finger is kind of on it and pushing forward so it's going that way, so it stays in there. Once I get that, then I'm going to finger tighten the screws for the locking mechanism. It will mildly lock the snare wires in. I can't just easily move it, but it can slide still. Now that I have that first side in, same approach for the other side. When I do set up the snare wires, I want the throw off to be engaged because I'm pulling the snare wire to a place where it should have that neutral, even sound. Make sure the wires are even. And then I'm pushing on that. You see how it's bowed a little bit? It is loose. So I'm going to just take my thumb and put it right here on the hoop. And that just gives it a little extra push in there. And I'm finger tightening because again, I don't want to stop it from moving, but I just don't want it to move too freely. And make sure that the snare band is going directly through the center of the locking mechanism over here. If it's off to one side, it'll shift the actual positioning of the snare wires and then they won't sit evenly. Very important to make sure everything is centered. Everything about the snare wire setup is all about centeredness. All right, so basically, like I said, throw off is engaged. Snare wires are on. They are centered. Now we allow for stretch, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the butt plate side and I'm going to just ever so slightly offset the centeredness. It's a very small amount that I'm shifting it. I'm going to tighten this side down now. So now this side is actually secure. And then what I'm going to do with this side is pull on it a little bit. It'll re-even things out because now I'm pulling back this way. You can't really see what I'm doing. This is all feel right here, but I am pulling it like the slightest bit more. There is. That's why I got 50 drum keys, so when one drops, I just grab another one. So I pulled on it, like I said, just a little bit more tension. So now when I turn the snare drum over, ready? That's in neutral. And now one turn, already focusing. What that does is it leaves my tension rods in a place where they don't have to start cranking up and yanking on the snare wires to do anything. It's a very low stress situation for the snare wires, for the wire bands, and for the throw off system. Everybody's working more efficiently and ultimately 10 times more effectively.